I'm Damon Zell, and we're only a week out from the release of Diablo Immortal. And I'm so excited, and I hope you guys are too. But today, we're going to talk about some news. We're going to talk about the Asia Pacific launch date. We're going to talk about some last-minute changes to the classes just before that launch next week. And always, if you like my content, please feel free to tag that subscribe button, ring that bell, share and like the video so you can stay up to date with everything that this channel is going to offer. Let's dig right into the first thing, which is the Asia Pacific launch date for Diablo Immortal. It is now June 22nd. Now, yes, that is 20 days after the official global launch on June 2nd, but don't worry, there are dedicated servers for your regions. Now, on the 22nd, it will become available on Windows PC, Android, and iOS in the rest of the Asia Pacific regions, which includes Hong Kong, Indonesia, Macau, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, Taiwan, and Thailand. Now, the game itself will also be available in Vietnam, but only on PC. And like I said, these regions are going to receive their own dedicated game servers to bring these players better connectivity as well as overall ping. Now, I covered in my first video the Hordraic Cosmetic set. Now, we have achieved the 30 million plus pre-registration to get this. If you haven't already done so, please get over to the website and pre-register on the website itself. Don't just do it through the iOS store or the Android shop. You have to do it through the website to get that. Now, there are some restrictions on that cosmetic set. In other words, it can only be claimed on one character per account, and you have to log into Diablo Immortal and complete the game's tutorial within 30 days after the release to claim this set. So please be aware of this if you want to look dapper while killing demons in those first 30 days. Now, some people have asked what are the system requirements for Diablo Immortal on the iOS, Android, as well as the PC. Well, on the iOS, you have to have an iPhone 6s or newer and using the iOS 11 operating system or later. On Android, you have to have an Android 5.0 or higher, and the processor needs to be a Snapdragon 660 or an Exynos 9611 and higher, with the video being the Adreno 512 or the Mali G72 MP3 and higher. And you have to have at least 2 gigabytes of RAM to at least get this game going. Now, for the PC side, the minimum requirements is you need to have Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10, or Windows 11. But you have to have at least Windows 7 to get it going. You need to have an Intel Core i3 or AMD FX 8100 or higher. For video, you need the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 460 and ATI Radeon HD 6850 or Intel Graphics 530. Now, these are just your substandard. These are your lowest end. I know you guys are probably rocking something higher than that. You need at least 4 gigs of RAM to run this. And of course, your resolution needs to be 1920 by 1080 minimum display resolution to play this game. Now, they do recommend you're running at least Windows 10 or 11. They recommend a Intel Core i5 or an AMD Ryzen 5. They ask that recommend the GeForce GTX 770 or an AMD Radeon RX 470 or the equivalent thereof, and they are recommending 8 gigs of RAM to run this. Now, there was also a question: if you decide you create a character on one server on June 2nd and start to play, will you be able to later on down the line transfer your character to a different regional server after it goes live? In other words, if you're in one of those Asia Pacific and you want to get a head start on this using a VPN or whatnot, they want to know, can you transfer to your region's server when those servers go live? And the question is no, the character created on the specific server will not be able to transfer to another. If players wish to create a character and play in servers that go live on June 22nd, you will need to create a new character instead. Now, let's dive into these class changes, which have been data mined. And I just want to let you know that please bear in mind that the game is still in development and things are subject to change before June 2nd. So these changes are a week out. They can be changed. They can add more changes. We don't know. But let's dive right in with the Wizard and Arcane Torrent. That's a channel, a barrage of arcane projectiles. each dealing, now they used to deal 273 damage, it has now been changed to 136 damage to all enemies in the area. Now, just like before, Arcane Torrent will slowly consume its energy, which recovers while Arcane Torrent is not in use. So remember, this is a channeled spell which will be using your energy. Now, the other change was to slow time, and this invokes a bubble of warp time and space for 6.25 seconds at a location. In other words, you're going to put up a bubble around you, and any projectiles are basically going to start slowing down so you can maneuver out of them. Now, this also reduces the attack and movement speeds of the affected enemies. It used to be by 50%, but they upped it to 80% now. And the slowing the movement of enemy projectiles by 80%. They also said the attack and movement speed reduction effects are reduced by 50% against players. So just keep that in mind. In PvE, it's going to be 80%, while in PvP, it's only going to give you that 50%. Now, there were some changes also done to Barbarian. First is the Queef, in which you unleash a powerful attack that deals, it used to be 506 damage, now it's 770 damage to all enemies in front of you. I believe this is a conal effect. Now, it causes them to bleed. It used to be for 507, that's been reduced down to 258 damage over 3 seconds with a maximum of 3 charges. So basically, you're still getting that same damage, but you're now getting more in the front of it instead of the dot. Now, they did also get a buff to Demoralize, and Demoralize, it releases a ferocious shout that forces nearby monsters to attack you. It used to deal 368 damage, it now deals 437 damage to all nearby enemies, and it reduces their damage done by 30% for 8 seconds. Now, Ground Stomp also had some changes done to it. It says here, smash the ground, stunning enemies nearby for 1.5 seconds, and dealing 607 damage. Charging longer increases the range, and stun, they added a stun now, duration up to 3 seconds. And for the move called Grab, they completely changed it. Now, the old version of Grab was seize a nearby monster and wield it as a weapon, replacing your primary attack with a swing for 379 to 656 damage against all enemies directly in front of you. Activate again to throw the monster, dealing an additional 574 damage to enemies in that direction. Now, the new version is seize a nearby enemy and wield it as a weapon, activate again to throw the enemy, dealing 723 damage to enemies in a direction. Monsters that are grabbed for 4 seconds and players for 2. Okay, so when you grab a monster, it affects them for 4 seconds. You can hold on to them for 4, and for players, you can only hold on to them for 2. Now, this is going to act as a crowd control, and it looks like they took away that additional swing damage. You now only have the hurling damage. Now, they did add some changes in for the monk, first with the Fist of Thunder, and that's a teleport to a nearby enemy and release a rapid succession of punches that each deal 579 to 924 damage, and that you can teleport again after every 3rd hit. Now, for PvP, they did change this. It's now each enemy player can be a teleport target once every 5 seconds. And it looks like they also buffed Deadly Reach, and that is project lines of piercing force that deal 492 to 689 damage to the target, and it used to be 173 to 243 damage, but now it's 231 to 324 damage to enemies behind the target. Now, there were 4 changes done to the Demon Hunter. First, with Knife Trap, place a knife trap that explodes when an enemy approaches, shooting knives that deal, it used to be 799 damage, now it's 937 damage to all nearby enemies. A maximum of 3 charges. You can have up to 3 traps at one time, but they cannot be placed to overlap each other. Placed traps take 1.4 seconds to arm and turn invisible. So they did buff that move. Rain of Vengeance, fire a massive volley of arrows in the air that rain down for several seconds. Now, it used to be 1632 damage, now it's down to 1448 damage to all enemies in that area over 4 seconds. Now, Escape, they took something out of Escape. It was jab your blade forward to all enemies in front of you, dealing 575 damage, and inflicting 80% reduced movement speed for 4 seconds while lumbering backwards to escape. Now, it used to be they took this part out here. Escape can be activated a second time within 3 seconds after it hits an enemy. So they just chop that off. That's no longer part of the move. Now, for Spinning Chalk Room, Launch a spinning chakram that deals, it used to be 677 damage, it's now upped to 745 damage to all enemies in its path, and then deals, it used to be 135, upped to 203 damage on its return path. Catching the chakram on its return path will reset its cooldown, but no more than 3 times every 12 seconds. And now the last week is the Crusader. Looks like they got 3 nerfs and 1 buff. To Drawn Quarter, a Mount Celestial Warhorse for 5 seconds, dispelling all movement impairing effects, increasing your movement speed by 60%, and replacing your primary attack. Holy Change will bind up to, now it used to be 8 nearby monsters, it's now down to 6 nearby monsters, dragging them as you ride, repeatedly dealing, now it used to be 213 damage, now it's reduced down to 186 damage. On Consecration, consecrate the ground around you. Now you used to be able to deal 2064 damage to all nearby enemies over 6 seconds. It's now down to 1836 damage. With Shield Charge, charge forward with your shield, pushing all enemies in your path. Now it used to inflict 694 damage. That's been reduced to 579 damage. Enemies colliding with terrain will be stunned for 3 seconds, so they left that in. Now, the only buff that they give was for Sacred Chain. Throw Holy Chains that bounce between enemies, striking up to 6 targets, and it used to deal 489 damage to each. Now it's now been upped to 590 damage to each. The chains stun enemies for 8 seconds, but are dispelled by damage. Duration reduced by 3 seconds on players. And that's everything we got so far until next week when the game launches. Now, if there's any other breaking news in the game, I will make a video about it and get that information to you. But until then, I hope to see you guys next week on launch on Thursday, June 2nd. I'll be in there. Like I said, I'm going to be creating the guild, Echoes from Hell. And as soon as I know which server I'm on, I will post it on my Discord. I'm going to put a link to my Discord in the description below. Feel free to join it. We can talk about this game, we can talk about other games. If you want to be part of the clan, Echoes from Hell, just apply there, we'll get you in there. But yeah, I hope to see you guys in the game and through the channel. Have a great day.